Hello and good evening all. Tonight's car comes to us from our Antipodean Anglophonic cousins, whose capacity for craziness that still gets results is second only to the great state of Florida. Not that I'm biased. This beastie, the Matich SR3, possibly pronounced Matich, but I'm going to be pronouncing it Matich, comes to us as the first eponymous vehicle from its designer and primary driver, Mr. Frank Matich. There was surprisingly scant information about this car available online after I started my research, so if there are any points of clarification or correction on the following information, please do let me know in the comments. Frank Matich, a Sydney native, got his start in the 1950s racing hill climbs and local events in various MGs and Austin Healey's before breaking into the big leagues of Australian competition with C-Type and D-Type Jags as they made it down under after becoming superannuated or falling victim to regulation changes, with his first major successes coming in with the 1960s. 60 and 61 saw podium finishes in the Australian Tourist Trophy, while 62 brought outright victory, all in D-Types. These improving results provided sufficient reputability and impetus to branch out, and he competed in Formula Junior under his own auspices as well as in sports cars for Team Total until 1967, seeing mixed success highlighted by two more Tourist Trophy wins in 64 and 66 in a Lotus and Elfin respectively. Desiring more control over the cars he raced, he established a design firm named for himself, debuting the SR3 for the 1967 season. Originally built with much more conventional looking, for the time, fiberglass bodywork that to me smacks of an angrier cousin of the excellent Lola T70 or a contemporaneous McLaren, Messrs. Broadley nor McLaren were nevertheless nowhere to be seen in the design or building stage, with construction of the car instead trusted to one Bob Britton. It is indeed obvious that Broadley was not involved, as despite the state of the art at the time, the SR3 was built on a tube frame chassis rather than a monocoque. Reportedly, this design borrowed rather heavily from the space frame of the Elfin 400 in which Matich won the 66 Tourist Trophy. The new car debuted with an Oldsmobile power plant, either just on the south or north side of 4.5 liters, depending on whose rounding preferences you go with and how tight the manufacturing tolerances weren't, also shared with the previous season's Elfin. The Olds V8 was good for somewhere in the 350 horsepower range, reports are a bit unclear, with power sent to some very wide rear tires through a manual ZF gearbox, supported by conventional suspension setup with wishbones, coil springs, and adjustable roll bars. In this original guise, the SR3 was capable enough to take Mr. Matich home to a repeat victory in the 1967 Tourist Trophy, and this promising start seemed to be taken as a sufficient sign that it was time to go on an international tour. Though an attempt at breaking into the UK racing scene was stillborn, the North American Can-Am Challenge Cup, Can-Am standing for Canadian American, in its second season at the time, was more open to newcomers, and the SR3 put in a showing for 4 events of the 6-race championship, now sporting a new 4.4-liter V8 motor sourced from Repco, although admittedly the architecture was still based on a General Motors block. This upped the power to somewhere north of 400 horses. While this improvement did help the vehicle's performance, it was insufficient to stand up to the larger, more powerful engines run by other American and Commonwealth competitors, and 1967, as mentioned in the Lola T160 video, was the start of the Bruce and Denny Show era of Can-Am, also sometimes called the Papaya Revolution due to the color of the McLaren factory cars. Consequently, Matich's vehicles failed to score any points in the 4 races that they contested, in fact failing to finish any of those events, but that is not to say, however, that their participation was without fruit. In addition to selling 2 SR3s to Californians Marvin Webster and Kent Price, they returned to Australia to make improvements, earned a 3-peat at the Aussie Tourist Trophy to kick off 1968, and started design work on a replacement SR4 for 1969 in collaboration with Henry Nervibecki. Neglecting the 68 Can-Am season to focus on the new car, the SR4's styling pivoted somewhat from the Lola-esque bodywork of the SR3 to now look more like they were copying Marcos's homework, and sported a new Repco 5-liter V8 making 580 horsepower. But that's a story for a different day. Unfortunately, Mr. Matich was badly burned in a boating accident in the 1970s and took a step back from racing to focus on his other ventures. He passed away in 2015 after a protracted battle with illness. He was fondly remembered not only for his consummate skill as a driver, but also for his dedication to his family and his sportsmanship in the racing community, both as a driver and a designer. One of the US-based SR3s that has provided most of the photos for this video was very clearly rebodied at some point after its sale, but I like both the color and the shape of the replacement bodywork, and it makes frequent appearances at various HSR events in the US, run by Sasco Sports. Obviously, these photos are primarily from Sebring, but maybe one day I'll grow up and go to a different track to shake things up. Actually, that's unfair. I go to Daytona and Road Atlanta on occasion as well. Anyway, that brings us to the end of another video. I won't give you any details on resale prices, because again, there's only 3 of them. And is not sufficient for any statistically significant data analysis. And for this week's call to action, not featuring the 3 sacred words of YouTube,
like, comment, subscribe,
I'm going to just phone it in this week with my occasional reminder to change your air filters, as by the time this video goes live, I'll be in the air on my way to Bolivia for the next couple of weeks. I just realized that's a total non sequitur. It has nothing to do with air filters. I've actually had a couple of calls this morning where people have mentioned having to change their air filters, so we're going to go with that instead. That just leaves it for me to say, as always, thank you for your time this evening, or whenever and wherever you are watching, and in the words of John Daly, not the golfer, good night and a good tomorrow.